I'll now call the November 10th, 2020 meeting of the King William County Planning Commission to order. Krista, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Stephen Greenwood, Ms. Jamie Rose, Ms. Bonnie Height. Here. Mr. John Breeden.
Here.
And Chairman Wagner.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the review. Before I do that, I just want to say I appreciate everybody wearing their masks. This issue with COVID is getting around and getting much worse, and unfortunately it spread a lot easier than we expected before. So I do appreciate you wearing the mask.
We do need to make
protect yourselves and others.
We do need to make an amendment to the agenda. We will not have an update by the Berkeley group under old business under D.
Under 7D.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that?
Ordinance update by Berkeley group. They will not be here to give us any updates.
Yeah, that. I put that in there, and I was referring to what something they had sent.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead with that. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is review and adoption of the meeting agenda. Do I?
Mr. Chairman, so the 7D has been struck, or?
No, 7D will say no.
So that's updates by Berkeley group.
Well, it should have been by Berkeley group. That was a mistake on my part.
No. Mr. Chairman, you added a 6A draft ordinance stakeholder groups, which is fine. But the 7D update by Berkeley group, they're not here to do an update. So,
no, they will not be here.
No. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended by striking 7D from the agenda.
I think the one you had added in your memo was 7C, correct?
No, 6A.
There was one for solar subcommittee as well.
Well, you may have added that too, but as far as the ordinance update per se, the stakeholder group he added, which
right.
we can talk about tonight, but the updates by Berkeley group D is what I'm asking to be removed from the agenda since they're not here.
Hold on just 1 minute, please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's right. So, you, Mr. Breeden has made a motion to approve the agenda striking 7D. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the next item on the agenda is the review and approval of the minutes. Anyone have any questions or changes in the? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the draft minutes.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Anyone here or anybody tuned in on Zoom, if you have a comment, you may make the comment. You have 3 minutes to speak. Or if you're representing a group, you have 5 minutes. Anyone in the audience wants to speak? If not, does anyone on Zoom or by telephone wish to speak? Okay. Seeing no one wishes to speak, I will close the public comment period. Under new business, item 6A, draft ordinance stakeholder groups. Berkeley had sent information out, and you all had this in the packet. They had suggested 4 stakeholder groups that were based on the recent set of stakeholder groups the staff had used. They have requested an adjustment of these groups as appropriate for King William County. Previous stakeholder groups were as follows: farmers and major landowners, tourism and economic development, real estate bankers, attorneys, and the 4th group was surveyors, engineers, and contractors. And I had asked that you all review the appropriateness of those groups and to represent the King William County community and provide recommendations for a revised list of 4 representative groups, and also to provide the names of any individuals you would recommend to serve on these stakeholder groups. I have provided the following recommendations for consideration and discussion, and then after I read those, I will ask you all if you have any recommendations or changes. I have suggested the farmers group to include large and small farms, fruit and berry growers, greenhouse operations, vegetable growers, foresters, and major landowners. The suggested group members, and this is certainly not an exhaustive list, it's just some that I recommend. J.N. Mills, who is a large grain farmer, William Latney, who is a forester and owner of a large conservation easement, Mr. Kirby, who has a large truck farm up on North Carolina Avenue, just as you come into the county from Hanover. Mr. Barber has a berry farm down on Route 30. I believe William Barber, who used to be on the BZA, I believe William Barber Sr. passed away a year or so ago. And I believe his son, William Jr., is continuing to run that farm. Also, Chris Couch, the greenhouse production. Catherine Stanley, who is a small farmer. Charles Pierce, a farmer. And Mr. Henderson, owner of cattle farm on Route 30 and a large landowner. I recommended him because he is a cattle farmer, which is a little different than most operations in the county, and because he is such a large landowner in the county. But truthfully, I have never heard anything from Mr. Henderson, never seen him at any of the meetings, so I don't know how much interested he would be, but we can contact him. Group C, combine real estate bankers, attorneys, surveyors, and engineers and contractors into one group. And the members I have suggested for that group are John Turnage, who is a realtor, Meade Rhodes, who is a developer. He develops outside of King William County, so he has no conflict of interest. And there are a number of others that have been on that committee before, and any of those that anyone would recommend, I think we need to consider. And then the group that I added was a Group D, citizens and small business owners, and a few suggested group members are Bob Hubbard, Bill Hughes, and Yvonne Broadus. I want to see us get more individuals from the county that don't belong to some of the other groups, but who are landowners or live in subdivisions in the county. And look at is homeowners associations, have them represented, pastors from churches, if anyone has any recommendations in that regard. And what I would also recommend is that members of the community be involved in all of these groups, rather than just having farmers or engineers, lawyers, and so forth. So to make it a more representative group of what is happening, what we're proposing in King William County. So that's what I have to recommend at this time. And if either one of you all have any further comments or recommendations?
I don't like that one.
Mr. Chairman, several things I'd like to mention. First off, I agree entirely with combining the contractors and what I call associated professions, because they're all involved in development, residential or commercial. So I wholeheartly support that breakdown. I actually put together a list of about 30 people. I've not approached anybody, but I put together a list of 30 people, and I broke up large business, industry, and tourism into large business and tourism as two possible separate groups. So I'll be submitting those. I think the primary stakeholders that I'm concerned with are the 14,000 residents of King William County that are not in West Point and aren't covered by this ordinance. And those folks having some input in how the ordinance looks, because they're all affected by the ordinance, by what gets built here. The other major group, of course, being those folks who were at the meeting we had before, who were actually doing the developing. And so I've gotten a large number of contractor folks as well as citizens who I'm submitting. The question I have at this point is anyone can be on these stakeholder groups? I'm a little unclear as to how this actually fleshes out. Can either staff, Ms. Graham, or you explain that in a little more detail for me and for anyone who may be watching?
Well, what I'm going by is what Berkeley Group had requested, that we look at the groups themselves to see
Right.
if there are changes in the groups, and to also look at stakeholders,
Right.
individual stakeholders.
And we have a better knowledge of who's in the community
Exactly.
and who might be interested
Exactly.
than they would be.
Berkeley Group doesn't know the people in the county.
But basically, anyone can be on these stakeholder groups. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I gave you the list, and I provided contact information for those, except that for the regular people who do business in the county, you should have contact information for them. So
Yes, and I can give you contact information on the ones I had represented. It would also be good to get those out to the planning commission members as well as the board of supervisors, because when we meet with the board of supervisors next Monday night and Berkeley Group, I'm sure we and the board will have recommendations.
yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I don't have any, issues with any of the breakouts of the groups and or the recommendations. As a matter of fact, they were already some of the people that I, thought should be on these type of groups. So.
But I do think, I agree with you, John. I think we do need to go heavier on the, as you said, 14,000 citizens of the county, so that we get their input as to what might be happening to their lives as well as.
Absolutely, sir.
All right. Next item on the agenda is old business A, Sweet Sioux Solar letter of explanation. You have that letter, but have you all both read that letter? So
They are no longer going to be needing an extension on this. They will be at Monday's work session. They just want to give a brief overview and explanation and kind of tell where the project is and where it's going.
So we will pick up on that next Monday night. All right. The next item on the agenda is item B, draft ordinance workbooks, and thank you, Krista and Sherry for putting those together. They're a big help, and thank you, Bonnie, for recommending that, because I found this much easier to go through and without having to go into 15 different files that I have at home.
Well, we're hoping it'll make it easier for everybody as they're working. They have all the materials the same. One thing we will need to change on is the changes for the historical board are not incorporated into the draft ordinance. So Thursday when we get back to work, I will send an email out. And if they can get that done by Monday, we'll print those pages to insert those pages. We won't have to do the whole book, but just those few pages, actually.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay, the next item on the agenda is ordinance update. Well, that's been struck, so that is all of the. Wait a minute, got one more here. Oh, okay. Item C, review of the solar subcommittee recommendations. I have sent that out, and I think that you all have read that. John, you in particular, is that in order, or do you have any comments?
I do have a couple comments, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So I did take a look at the draft ordinance, and Berkeley incorporated everything as written, with only two exceptions, both of which I was okay with, and I wanted to run both of those by everyone here. The first one was we had talked about marginal lands, and we did not define it, and so they did make a minor modification to that I think is in line with what the subcommittee had decided. However, that change I would like to, before we go to public hearings some months from now, if there are any additional changes that may come to the draft, I'm going to run it by the full subcommittee again to make sure they're comfortable with any changes that we have made. So there's one section, and that is actually section 86-352, number 5, and again it changes marginal lands that were not defined to or on lands that are not identified as prime farmland by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And I think that was the intent of the subcommittee. But again, they'll have a chance between now and the public hearing to say, oh no, we'll define marginal lands this way, and then we can consider what the subcommittee comes up with. The only other change was in the same section, number 6, that condition was struck because it was in conflict with the requirements in 86-355, number 3, the distance from 360 and 30. So we'd actually hit it two different places, and so we struck the one. And other than that,
So they have taken out that conflict.
yes. And so other than that, all the changes requested by the solar subcommittee have been incorporated in this current draft you have in the
That's incorporated in the current draft for the new ordinance.
in the draft dated, it's in front of the yellow tab, dated June 12, 2020, although it actually includes the solar recommendations made in August. But yes, it's in that draft in the booklet.
Okay. My question is, if somebody comes in to Sherry and asks for a permit for a new solar facility, what do we go by?
Well, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Graham, the board of supervisors has put a moratorium on them. So I would assume that
No, there's no more moratorium.
This the moratorium is ended.
There was never any moratorium. The board of supervisors accepted them.
Right, but staff was not to review any.
What the question was, the staff was not to review any until the subcommittee completed their work. But once the subcommittee completed their work, then that needs to go into the current ordinance, which is under site plan.
Mr. Chairman, and correct me if I'm wrong again, Ms. Graham, we have to go with the existing ordinance, or for the conditional use permit, we can make them follow if we so choose, and I would think it would be appropriate to do so, the new modifications. But I mean, from the standpoint of you know, if the board of supervisors had said until the subcommittee made its report, that's one thing. If they said until the ordinance was updated, that's another, and I'm not really sure what the supervisors decided.
Yeah, right now, the way I was reading it and understanding it, we're not accepting applications for public hearing, for the solar systems. And I guess until we get further approval between the planning commission and the board of supervisors to start accepting them again, we've just got a hold on it until all of this goes through.
Well, that,
Where was it?
So if we
On
found
the
it
board packets, I think, or something?
yeah, looking in the minutes, then
Yeah.
yeah, you're correct
the
on that.
resolution was, I believe.
You are correct on that. The,
So right now, that's what I'm telling people, that, you know, if, with an approval of a CUP, it's allowed in the different zones. We've had several, inquiries about it, but we're not accepting applications for public hearing at this time. And they've been okay with it.
let me ask you this then. We cannot use the proposed ordinance, but we can modify the recommendations of the proposed ordinance to the site plan that it's
Oh.
under.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, so with the current conditional use plan requirements in the current ordinance, we can add conditions, and what I will personally do is look at the draft ordinance and make sure that any of those conditions are included in any conditional use permit that I vote in favor of recommending to the Board of Supervisors.
Most of what we had on our last one
Right, exactly.
is incorporated in the
When,
changes.
yeah, right, exactly. The draft we had at the time the Sweet Sioux application was made, we incorporated, basically the Sweet Sioux application became the basis for the
For the
draft.
solar
And it could have been the other way around. The draft becomes the conditional use permit for Sweet Sioux. But as far as hearing additional things, I'll wait till the Board of Supervisors or staff have told
What
us.
we need to do is go back to the Board of Supervisors,
Yes.
recommend the changes, either recommend the changes or advise the Board of Supervisors we're going to leave this as it was. And we can add those as conditions if someone comes in and applies for a permit. But we need to let the Board of Supervisors know, and we need to go ahead and get back to where we are accepting applications.
Mr. Chairman, that's above my pay grade. That's something that Board of Supervisors can choose to do or not to do. My recommendation would be if they open the gates for more applications, we as the Planning Commission use the draft ordinance for the conditions that we require. Plus, if the additional ones required for that particular month.
We need to make a recommendation as a follow-up on the holdup. We need to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to go ahead with the ordinance as we have it now, what we use for Sweet Sioux, to go ahead with that ordinance so that we can accept applications. And then if we get applications in, we can look at including any of these changes we want to make as conditions on the additional conditions on the ordinance. But we have got to get this back out to the Board of Supervisors and begin accepting.
That's up to the supervisors. However, if you're looking for recommendation, I would welcome hearing one from
to make
the
that
site.
recommendation. It's not up to the Board of Supervisors to do that. It's up to us to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors because we asked the Board of Supervisors to give us the ability to hold up on the permits until such time as we have a recommendation. So if you're okay with that, then I would entertain a motion to take this or to go to the Board of Supervisors or to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that we begin accepting applications now based on the conditional use permit requirements with the with what we use for Sweet Sioux.
Mr. Chairman, when I made the initial motion, it was with the expectation that we would actually have an ordinance ready for approval by this past late summer, early fall. Now the whole process is thrown back months and months and months. And I'm not comfortable ending the moratorium or recommending to end the moratorium at this point. So my recommendation is going to be to maintain the moratorium. And if you'd like a motion along those lines, I'd be happy to make one, and you all can vote for it or against it. I will not be making a motion asking the supervisors to move forward with solar farms when we have these focus groups lined up to talk about all the ordinances, and we'll be looking at doing this for months. That's just me.
You got a comment, Bonnie?
You know, I think it was the board's decision to recommend that there not be any more reviews until the solar committee had their opportunity to review. I don't know that it's really our place to have to make that motion. I guess I would rather have the question put towards the board if they are looking for that recommendation from us in a form of a motion before we jump to make that motion, would be my feeling on it.
Mr. Chairman, especially since we'll be meeting with them in 6 days.
What now?
Especially since we'll be meeting with them in 6 days. So,
And that we don't have our full planning commission here tonight.
right, that too, yes, thank you.
That's not on the agenda for that meeting. I will take that up with the board. But I do not see we have done what we told the board to do. We've got our recommendation. We can either do it either way, but we have got to allow anyone that is requesting solar to go ahead and move forward with that. Have we had anyone show an interest?
I've had several check in to see whether they can put the solar farm on those certain properties that they're looking at and what the process was.
Well, we need to go ahead and move forward with that process. I will take it up with the board of supervisors.
Again, my concern isn't to delay that happening. I just don't know whether it's the planning commission's place to actually make a formal motion to move that forward to the board. So I'd like some advice from them as to whether that's what they're looking for from us in order for us to put that in motion.
And Mr. Chairman, we were the ones that initially had asked for the staff not to have to spin their wheels, so to speak, for applications when it was in flux. And I agree with you, my comfort level is much higher than it was when we started this process. However, because the status of the ordinances as a whole has been subject of such extreme discussion and delay, I'm not comfortable tonight pushing forward with it. I would be delighted next month to sponsor such a motion if the supervisors would like us to consider it at that point.
I am not comfortable with waiting another 8 months to allow anyone wishing to propose a solar farm.
We can do it at our December meeting if the Board of Supervisors would like us to. And I'll talk I'll talk to them on a regular basis. But we can
I will discuss this with staff, and I will have a recommendation next Monday night. But just to be clear, the changes, the subcommittee that I asked for was to look at the conditional use.
Yes. And those changes.
Make the changes in the conditional use. Now those changes can also be incorporated in the new ordinance, but the changes reviewed by that subcommittee were to go into the current conditional use to be so that we could move ahead with ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, it's in the current draft, and again, I'm very comfortable with using that draft for the conditions we require of future applicants. So I'm totally fine with that. if it was a matter of it being in the ordinance in stone, and this is what they have to do, we could not do that because it's not in the current ordinance approved by the Board of Supervisors. But because it's in the draft, because the subcommittee was in agreement with the changes, I think the commission is in agreement with the changes. I'm comfortable with using the draft as our baseline for future applications. I just simply don't see the need after a year to make a precipitous move tonight with 3 out of 5 members on the planning commission when we're meeting with the Board of Supervisors in 6 days. So I would be delighted to make the motion at our December meeting if the consensus of the board is they're ready to receive more applications. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We will take that up to the Board of Supervisors, and I will ask it be put on the agenda for next Monday night.
That's fine, thank you.
Ms. Graham, do you see much of an issue with adapting that to the current ordinance for conditional use?
Well, at this time, we've got the draft, but if you want to incorporate it currently as conditions, I would like for our county attorney to take a look at it, even if it's just that section, prior to us doing anything further. There have been some changes with the solar. They do have someone on staff that's very knowledgeable of all that she does. So if we could have her take a look at it too.
They who have someone on staff?
Our county attorney.
Oh, the county attorney has someone.
So
Could you go ahead and initiate that?
we will.
If like Mr. Chairman, I'll be delighted to make a motion to that effect as well, asking staff to have the county attorney look at it so it can expedite it for the Board of Supervisors. So I'd like to make a motion to do just what
We will accept it.
Okay, I think you need a second.
Oh, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, that concludes everything except the staff and special committee reports. Anything in those reports? You have given us copies of all of that. Any comments, Ms. Graham?
Oh, I don't think so. Unless y'all have any questions on them.
Excuse me?
Unless you have any questions.
I have one question. The trailer or whatever you call that thing on 360.
We've already sent a letter out on it.
Okay, I was a little confused by the note in here that said that it was, if I find it right quick.
Well, they had, earlier in the year, they were sent letters. And then
Yes,
they removed them.
Yeah.
And then one comes back. So, they were sent a letter to remove them. And I want to say Christy had December 15th. She had to give them 30 days. And if not, then we'll have to take legal action.
Now, you'll bear with me just a minute. Can't find that, I had it noted. But sorry, I can't find it now, but anyhow, you've already taken care of it. I was just confused by the way it was in the,
And I didn't see where she put it in, but I do know that this was one from earlier in the year.
right.
And they abated it.
Right.
And then it came back, so.
Okay. So that has been taken care of, and thank you for that. Don, Bonnie, Don, do you all have any comments? All right, well, I just want to thank the few others that showed up for being here. I hope we'll all be back together. I understand that Stephen has gone to Hawaii, so I think he will not be at our Monday meeting, which is a little unfortunate, I guess, because that's, we all got the email from the county administrator on that meeting. He saw that we got 4 items to discuss. It will be an long meeting. I'm just not sure how Berkeley is going to handle that meeting. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But there's no way we can go through this complete ordinance with the board of supervisors in one meeting or in 10 meetings for that matter. So we'll just have to wait and see how they handle it. Did you send the comments that I had to Berkeley?
I did.
Those comments Janie and I had put together. I don't think I sent them out to you or me, but Janie and I had put together some information regarding why we made certain changes in the ordinance, like on the 2 subdivision ordinances and the issue with site plans.
Okay, I don't think I saw them, Mr. Chairman.
And I know all of those will meet some opposition, maybe from the board of supervisors.
So these were changes, proposed changes to the ordinance?
These were, no, there weren't no changes in the ordinance.
Okay.
What I was doing was providing information on why we decided. In other words, subdivisions, and we talked about minor subdivisions in rural areas with the proliferation of those subdivisions, and I gave some background on why we wanted to make those changes and background on why we wanted to add the minor subdivision ordinance for farmsteads, as well as some background on the reasons for it.
Can you share it with staff?
I gave Sherry a copy of it,
Okay.
but what I wanted to do was let Berkeley look at it and let that part, if Berkeley agrees, let that be a part of Berkeley's comments on the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments? If not, then I will entertain the motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. Not hearing one. I will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all.